This is Rick Rowe for Rule Investment Media, sponsors of the 2024 Natural Resources Investment Symposium, July 7 through 11. Attend either live in Boca Raton or from the convenience of your own home via live stream. In either circumstance, we're going to give you more programming, 60 hours worth, than you can absorb in the 4 days that you have available to absorb it. To that end, whether you attend live or via live stream, all of the proceedings will be recorded so that you can revisit the material time and time again, which you'll need to do. Also, to that end, we are introducing you via interview to every exhibitor at the conference, and for that matter, every speaker at the conference, so that you can learn more about the exhibitors before the conference and allocate both your time and your capital more efficiently. Note, too, that every public company exhibitor at this conference is owned in my personal accounts or in accounts I manage, which means that every single exhibitor has been vetted. The fact that I own stock is no guarantee, sadly, that the share price goes up, but it is a guarantee that the process is very honest. Every single public company exhibitor at this conference has been vetted. We continue this process today, interviewing a friend of mine of very long standing, John Black, CEO of Aldebaran, but a man with a long history in exploration, which is what originally brought him to my attention. John, first of all, thank you for your efforts over 2 decades on behalf of investors, myself among them. Thank you, too, for your sponsorship and support of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium.
Thanks, Rick. Good to catch up, and I look forward to seeing you again in Boca Raton soon.
Tell us something about your past efforts in exploration, both your major mining company experience, but also your prior efforts and your team's prior efforts in monetizing exploration success.
Certainly. I'm an exploration geologist by background, and myself and our team here at Aldebaran, what we specialize in doing is identifying projects that have potential to be very large copper deposits, acquiring those when the market's down or when the group that has them doesn't fully understand the potential of what they have, and then drilling those deposits out, de-risking them, and then ideally selling them to a major mining company, effectively replacing the exploration function of a major mining company. My formation was I worked for Rio Tinto, Western Mining, and major copper miners through the early part of my career, and then jumped into the junior space to essentially move more quickly and I think more successfully. We've been able to find some pretty significant copper deposits. Our first company was called Antares Minerals. We had the good fortune to identify and drill out the Jiquira deposit in southern Peru, which we sold to First Quantum for $650 million in 2010. So we have executed our business plan successfully once, and we're very excited to be on an outstanding copper project with Aldebaran, the Altar project in San Juan province in Argentina, which we'll talk more about today.
Well, why waste time? Tell us about the deposit. Tell us how you acquired it. Tell us what you thought the unanswered questions were at the time that you acquired it, and tell us how you've answered some of those questions.
Well, Altar is a project that's been on our radar for quite some time. It's been a project that's been known for more than 20 years. It was largely drilled out by a group called Peregrine Metals. That was run by Eric Friedland, Robert Friedland's brother. They drilled the project out and sold it to Stillwater Mining in 2011 for almost $500 million, $487 million at the time. So it was known as a large deposit at that time, but it never really fit within Stillwater Mining. And when Sibanye acquired Stillwater, it opened up an opportunity for us to see if we could acquire an option to earn into a significant portion of the deposit. So we have an agreement with Sibanye Stillwater to earn an 80% in the project. And we weren't simply interested in recycling a project that had been known before. What we saw in the project was a large existing deposit that had potential to become significantly larger. And we've made a new discovery called Altar United, which is a brand new zone within the deposit. Over the last 2 years, we've been announcing some very exciting drill results. And I think later this year, you'll see us announce a new resource update on this, which will open some eyes. This will become one of the largest undeveloped copper deposits, particularly in the hands of a junior mining company.
Now, as I understand the information, the first thing you did was issue some equity and some cash to Stillwater and complete a work commitment to earn 60%, and now you're in the process of earning another 20%. So you'll end up with an 80% interest. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. We're already at the 60%, and by the end of this calendar year, we'll cross the boundary to be at a full 80% interest in the project, at which time it becomes a joint venture with ourselves and Sibanye-Stillwater.
In terms of the deposit, what stage are we at in terms of understanding? Are we at preliminary economic assessment, pre-feasibility study, feasibility study? What level of documentation do you have around the company that you'll be amending with this resource statement?
We're still really at the stage where we're defining the full size of the project. So we do have an announced resource. Our current resource is about 1.2 billion tons of measured and indicated resource, just a little bit less than 0.5% copper with significant gold and molybdenum credits. An additional zero point 0.2 or 200 million tons of similar grade material inferred. So over 1.4 billion tons of mineralization. To put that into pounds and ounces, that's 13 billion pounds of copper and 3.8 million ounces of gold contained in the deposit. But that was based on the first 120,000 meters of drilling in the project. Since that resource was put out in 2021, we've completed 50,000 meters of additional drilling and discovered an entirely new zone. So late this year, in Q4 of this year, we'll put out an updated mineral resource estimate, which we believe will substantially grow the size of the deposit, and that'll put us in a position to put out the first PEA in the first half of next year. So within the next 12 months, we'll see continued flow from the drill results. We've just finished a 20,000 meter program a week or so ago, and then we'll see that resource update in approximately November of this year, and then early to mid next year, we'll see that first PEA. So two very significant milestone updates within the next 12 months.
Rule Classroom attendees will note the importance of answering unanswered questions. We have two of those coming up in the updated resource statement and then in the preliminary economic assessment, the first good valuation opportunity that we have. Tell us something about what you're trying to accomplish with the drilling that you're doing now. Are you trying to increase the size of the deposit? Are you trying to increase your understanding of the tenor of the deposit? What is it that you're about now before this updated resource study?
The last two field seasons really have been in defining this new zone. The deposit was previously consisted of two zones of mineralization, Altar East and Altar Central. That's the 1.4 billion tons that we currently report. Both of those deposits are close to each other, so they fall within one conceptual pit. But between those two deposits, our geologists had very strong evidence that there was a third pulse of mineralization. When you're in a big porphyry district like this, it's often a cluster of deposits that are occurring near each other. That geologic evidence was backed up with some deep-looking geophysical surveys we completed 2 years ago, and that pointed to a third point of mineralization conveniently tucked right between the two existing deposits. And so for the last 2 years, we've been systematically drilling at about a 200-meter spacing and announcing some very significant runs that are commonly in the 500 to 1,000 meter lengths of approximately 0.5% copper grade, sometimes a little bit better. So those drill holes that we've been reporting are clearly indicating a very significant addition to the deposit. So with the drilling we've just completed, we believe we'll be at a point to show the full size of the deposit, and then it's very logical we move to the next more critical stage of showing the economic viability of the project.
John, I spent some time in San Juan, a
Mm-hmm.
big place. Parts of it are very remote. Can you talk to me both about access and egress, which is to say the infrastructure in the area, and other mining operations in San Juan? Give people a sense of your neighborhood.
Absolutely. San Juan's an incredibly exciting place to be working right now. There are quite a number of major projects under exploration and getting ready to be at the development stage right now. So even though we're right on the crest of the Andes, right on the Argentinian-Chilean border, so remote in some sense, but we're 25 kilometers away from the operating Antofagasta mine on the Chilean side. And immediately across from that, so 25 kilometers south of us, is Glencore's large Pachón project. And 50 kilometers to the north of us is McEwen's Los Azules project. So 3 very large multi-billion ton copper deposits right along the crest of the Andes on the Argentine side. Quite frankly, if all 3 of those had been located 30 kilometers to the west in Chile, they would already be large mines by now.
And while normally I don't like big picture questions, it is unarguably true that the political landscape in Argentina has changed fairly radically. Do you think that that change has a chance of being semi-permanent? And what do you see politically, both in Argentina and also in San Juan, that suggests that Argentina will become a more friendly mining jurisdiction?
But you're absolutely right. With President Milei coming into office, we're seeing already some radical changes, and I believe we'll continue to see those over the next few months and years. I do believe that they're here to stay this time. The Argentine public has realized that continuing the economic policies of previous governments, really over the last 50 years of predominantly Peronist governments, has just not worked. And so President Milei he was very transparent. He announced that these would be radical changes, that they would be painful. Everybody would have to take some suffering on this to reel in the inflation, get things under control. But he's already showing evidence that that's working, and he still maintains very strong support from the public, which is a critical element of this as we move forward. So it's important to note that it's not just an overnight change with the arrival of President Milei. Even in the previous presidencies, there was a strong realization that mining could provide an economic motor, an engine to improve the economy. It was something that had been basically untapped due to the large amount of capital that's required, particularly foreign capital, to come in. That changes had to be made. It's always been easy for us to get the capital into the country. The question is, how can you expatriate your profits and get those out? And those are the changes that are being made right now. And we're seeing them immediately in terms of import exportation facilitation. And I think over the next few months, it's very likely we'll see announcement of commitments to develop major mines. We're already seeing it in the lithium space. We're seeing it somewhat in the oil and gas space, and I think copper's probably next.
Interesting. And are you seeing that confidence reflected at places like Rio, Sibanye, Stillwater, South 32 as an example, people that you have excellent pipelines into?
Absolutely. I've been working in Argentina for probably 30 years, and it's always been known that the rocks are correct. It's the same geology that we see across the border in Chile. And so the rocks have been correct, the deposits have been there. It's just been a question of whether it was good business to come into the country. And so for the much of that 30 years I've been there, we've seen majors exploring, but nobody making a commitment to invest large amounts of money to develop a project. That's changed radically. Just in the last 2 years, it's switched from a few sort of non-traditional mining groups, Chinese groups or other groups doing investigations in the country, to suddenly we're seeing all of the major companies come in. Right at this stage, they're doing it largely by forming strategic alliances. For example, on our Altar project, we have South 32 as a major strategic investor monitoring the project. We also have Rio Tinto's Newton Group investigating their new sulfide leach technology on the project. So we're seeing strong expressions of interest from the major miners to monitor what we're doing, which is very, very indicative of the interest they have in obtaining large copper deposits and kind of getting a foot in the door to watch what we're doing.
John, the purpose of these interviews is to allow our attendees to get to know the companies before the conference. To study the materials around the conference, and to reach out to living, breathing human beings within the company so that they can allocate both their time and capital at the conference more efficiently. Who at Aldebaran should our attendees contact, and how might they reach that person?
Certainly, absolutely. We welcome that. There's a lot of information on our website is a good point to start at. But in terms of direct contacts, please feel free to reach out to me at john.black@Aldebaran Resources, or Ben Charrington, who manages our IR functions, ben.charrington@Aldebaran Resources. you can contact either of us, and we'd be more than happy to provide information, not just about what we're doing at Altar and within Aldebaran, but also about the copper space overall. I think copper is just really breaking out right now, and it's still a great time for people to make an investment into copper space. And there's great leverage when you're on a new discovery like what we have right now. So please feel happy. We'd be pleased to have you contact us at any time you'd like to.
John, thank you for your efforts on behalf of shareholders, myself included. Thank you, too, for your ongoing support and sponsorship of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium.
Great. Thanks, Rick. Look forward to seeing you soon.